My fiancé's mother acted like she was the bride, not me. She called him night and day, told him I wasn't good enough, and even showed up at my workplace to fix things. I finally ended the engagement, and now he and his mom are destroying each other. My fiancé's mother caused issues in our relationship since the beginning. So much so that I recently ended our engagement and am wondering if I did the right thing. For background, my fiancé is the oldest child and the only boy. His mom has been divorced a long time and has made questionable decisions in the men she chose. She married a man who was in prison and would take my fiancé and his two sisters to visit the man in prison when they were all young kids. She also told my fiancé he had the same dad as his two sisters and gave him the same last name as them. He didn't find out until he was an adult that the man wasn't his real dad. His mom has no idea where his real dad actually is to this day. My fiancé still struggles with this. The problems with her started pretty much immediately after my fiancé and I started dating. He wanted me to have a close relationship with his mom by talking to her on the phone, since she lives out of state. When he first told her about me, all she said was, "She's old. She's too old for you." Mind you, him and I are both in our 30s. He's 30 and I'm 37. He didn't have a problem with my age, so he pretty much brushed her comment off and told me not to worry about it. Every time I talked to her on the phone, she was over the top, fake nice. I then started noticing financial issues with the two of them a few months later. She would ask him for bill money a lot, even though she's only 48 years old and works as a therapist full-time. Sometimes he would ask her for money too, which I found out about because one day they were talking on the phone and I heard him say he deposited the money he borrowed from her into her bank account. After we got engaged, I had a conversation with him about money. I'm very financially stable, and he is not. I was uncomfortable with the constant borrowing of money back and forth. He told me straight out that he would never stop letting his family borrow money even after we're married, and if they needed help, he'd give it to them. No questions asked. That was a huge red flag to me. Another huge red flag. The day we got engaged, he called his mom and told her the news. She was on speakerphone and didn't know that I was in the room and could hear her. When he told her the news, she yelled out, "But what about me?" She never said congratulations. She never explained why she said that. My fiancé said it was a normal reaction and basically told me to let it go. Then he told her not to tell the rest of the family the news because he wanted to tell them himself. The first thing she did when we hung up was call the whole family and tell them that we were engaged, even though he had told her not to. Another thing that bothered me, she would call him night and day, 24/7. Almost daily. If he didn't answer, she would blow up his phone and call back to back non-stop until he answered, to the point where he'd have to pull out his phone when we were in the movie theater or on date night just to text her back because she was freaking out that he didn't answer. It felt like I could never get a moment alone with him. Even though she was several states away, she would call and vent to him about everything going wrong in her life. She would also vent to him about how terrible his grandma is and every little thing she was doing. Even though my fiancé still had a relationship with his grandma. So, even though she was a few states away, it felt like his mom was literally the third person in our relationship. When I talked to my fiancé about boundaries, he said he didn't know what a boundary was. When I explained it to him, he said he was uncomfortable putting boundaries with his family and didn't want to. We even went to couples therapy, and the therapist told him he needed to put boundaries, and he still wouldn't do it. And the very few times he tried to, his mom would get angry and guilt trip him so bad that he stopped trying. If anything, she called and texted him 10 times more after he tried to set boundaries. He would also gaslight me often. When I would try to talk to him about setting boundaries with her, he would get over the top angry and say, "You're so obsessed with my mom. You keep talking about her nonstop and she doesn't even think about you at all. Get over it." Because of all of this, I decided not to travel out of state and meet his mom for the first time. I felt uncomfortable and didn't feel welcome. I also saw texts in his phone where his mom said I had issues, that he deserved better than me, that he should break up with me, etc. We had regular couples issues, but never anything major. The biggest arguments we ever had were always about his mom. His mom was so upset that we weren't making the trip out to see her that she called him again and again, day and night, trying to convince him to change his mind and for him to go without me. She got other family members and even her friends to call him too, trying to convince him. They would call and ask him if I was around, and if he said yes, they told him to call them back when he was alone. I felt completely alienated in my own relationship. He always said, "They're states away. How can you feel like they're in the middle of our relationship?" I really felt like his mom wanted to be in a relationship with him and marry him instead of me. Meanwhile, I felt like I had no support from him. I tried to explain to him that the person you marry should come first. That's the person you're going to eat with, sleep with, travel with, do everything with, for the rest of your life. When I said that, it was like a bomb went off. He screamed at me for 2 hours at the top of his lungs about how he would never sleep with his mom, and how I was disgusting for even suggesting that. He totally took what I said out of context, and I had never seen him react that way about anything before. Then one day, we were in the middle of having yet another argument about boundaries with his mom, when I saw that he was on the phone texting while I was talking to him. I asked him if we could focus on the conversation without our phones, and he still kept texting. Then I saw that the person he was texting while we were arguing was his mom. They were having a conversation about the weather, of all things, and it was the straw that broke the camel's back. I told him I couldn't do this anymore, and I was done. I couldn't take the problems with his mom anymore, and him not putting any healthy boundaries with her. We broke up that day, and I haven't heard from him since. Some of my friends say I should have just ignored his mom and just continued my relationship with him, but I honestly feel like it was to the point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. It was really taking a toll, not only on our relationship, but it was taking a toll on me with the constant drama. There are days when I think about it now and I question if I made the right decision. Did I do the right thing? Relevant comments. Commenter un, NTA. Yes, you did the right thing. He was honest and told you he'd place his birth family as the highest priority, had no interest in setting boundaries, no intention of becoming financially responsible for himself, and was fine with her bombing him by phone. That's no way to live. Let him go and move on. Maybe someday he'll figure it out, but wouldn't hold my breath. Commenter do. If you stayed, this would have been your life for potentially 40 or more years. He would send her your money without asking, let her interfere with raising your kids, and the second she asked, he'd move her in with you both without asking you first, and you would then have to appease her for a decade or 3. If he can't choose you over his mom, he's not yet ready to get married or start a family. He wasn't even willing to listen to a therapist, so you had no chance of getting through to him. Don't waste any more time on him when he can't even prioritize your relationship over texting about the weather. Commenter Troa, you dodged a bullet. More like a nuke. This man is not ready to get married to anyone but his mommy. You will find your person. He was definitely not it. Update 1. Hi everyone. I honestly didn't think I'd be back here, but after reading through all the comments on my original post, I wanted to start by saying thank you. I wasn't expecting so many people to take the time to respond, but the kindness, advice, and validation I got from complete strangers really helped more than I can say. A lot of you told me I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't overreacting, and that I did the right thing by walking away. I've reread those comments on bad days just to remind myself I'm not the villain in this story. So seriously, thank you to everyone who took the time to write something supportive or even shared your own experience with overbearing in-laws. It meant a lot. When I first posted, I was still second-guessing everything. It's been about 6 weeks since the breakup now, and things have escalated in ways I didn't expect. I thought when I ended the engagement, that would be the end of it, but apparently, his mom didn't get the memo. About a week after I broke things off, my ex texted me out of nowhere. His message started off kind of neutral. Hey, how have you been? Then he followed it up with, I've been thinking about you a lot. I won't lie. It gave me a pit in my stomach. For a second, a tiny part of me wondered if maybe he'd changed or realized how much damage his mom was causing. But nope. 2 sentences later, he wrote, Mom's been a mess since you left. She's been crying nonstop and blaming herself. She keeps saying you hated her. I just stared at my phone in disbelief. Even when he supposedly wanted to reconcile, it was all about her. Not an apology for yelling at me, not acknowledgement of what I went through, just another guilt trip about his mother's feelings. I didn't respond. 2 days later, I was at work when my coworker came up to me and said there was someone in the waiting room asking for me. She looked uncomfortable and whispered, She says she's family. My stomach dropped immediately. I walked out to the front, and there she was, his mom, standing there with a grocery bag full of muffins and that same overly sweet fake smile she always used. She said, Hi, sweetheart. I was just in the neighborhood and thought we could talk woman to woman. For context, she lives 4 states away. There was no reason she should have been anywhere near my job. I told her I was working and couldn't talk. She ignored that and started saying she forgave me for hurting her son, that she understood I was confused and scared of real love. I was trying to stay professional since I was at work, but she wouldn't stop. She said, "He's been so depressed since you left. He barely eats. You two were supposed to make me a grandmother one day." When I told her that wasn't appropriate to say, she flipped. Her whole demeanor changed in a second. Her face hardened, and she said, "You broke him. You'll never find someone who loves you the way he did." At that point, my boss overheard and came out to handle it. He politely told her to leave, and she stormed out mumbling about how ungrateful I was. I was shaking afterward. It was humiliating. I'd never had someone show up at my workplace like that before, and it confirmed exactly what so many commenters had said. This woman had no boundaries, none whatsoever. That night, my ex texted me again. He said, "Mom said you were rude to her when she tried to make peace. I don't get why you can't forgive people." I asked him if he realized how inappropriate it was for her to show up at my job unannounced, and he said, "She was just trying to fix things. You always think she's attacking you." That was the final straw. He truly didn't see anything wrong with it. For a while, things went quiet. I started to feel like maybe it was over, but then, about a week later, his younger sister called me. She was the only one in that family who ever seemed remotely normal. She apologized on behalf of her mom, saying she'd tried to talk some sense into both of them, but they were spiraling. Apparently, after I left, my ex moved back in with his mom temporarily because she said she was too lonely and anxious to be alone. His sister said she'd overheard their mom telling people that I broke up the family and that I was jealous of their bond. My ex, instead of correcting the narrative, leaned into it and started telling relatives that I couldn't handle being with someone close to his family. I didn't respond to any of that. I thanked his sister for reaching out and told her I hoped they both got help. She sounded genuinely sad, like she knew things had gone too far. But the weirdness didn't stop there. A few days later, I started getting calls from an unknown number late at night. I never answer unknowns, but one night I slipped up and picked up without checking the caller ID. It was his mom. The first thing she said, in this smug tone, was, "He's seeing someone new now. Someone who doesn't try to turn him against his family." I didn't even reply. I just hung up and blocked the number. That call told me everything I needed to know. She wanted me to be jealous. She wanted control. She wanted to feel like she'd won. Blocking her felt like lifting a 100-pound weight off my chest. I also blocked my ex on everything: phone, email, social media. I had to, or I'd never stop being dragged into their drama. Since then, things have been calm, quiet, peaceful even. For the first time in over a year, I can wake up without checking my phone to make sure there's not a new crisis. No random phone calls during dinner, no guilt trips, no walking on eggshells. I didn't realize how much mental space that relationship took up until it was gone. I started going to therapy again, focusing on myself, and even booked a solo trip for next month. Something I'd been putting off because he always said traveling alone was weird. I still think about him sometimes. I won't pretend I don't. But every time I do, I remember how exhausted I felt constantly having to compete with his mother for basic respect. I remember sitting in therapy while he argued with the counselor because she told him he needed to set boundaries. I remember him saying, "You're obsessed with my mom," when all I wanted was a normal adult relationship. That's what keeps me grounded. A couple mutual friends told me he and his mom have been posting dramatic Facebook statuses about loyalty and fake women. Honestly, it's pathetic. It's clear they still feed off each other's drama. And weirdly enough, I don't even feel angry anymore. I feel pity. He's still trapped in that same cycle he's been in since he was a kid, trying to fix her, trying to make her happy, confusing guilt with love. I know now that leaving was the only thing I could do. Love doesn't fix someone who refuses to acknowledge they're broken. I did the best I could, and that has to be enough. To everyone who told me to protect my peace, thank you. You were right. I finally feel like myself again. And no, I don't regret ending it. Not for a second. Update 2. Hi everyone, it's been a few months since my last update, and I figured I'd share what's happened since then because a few people from the original post and first update have been messaging asking how things turned out. First, thank you again to everyone who commented before. Your support meant more than I can express. When I wrote my first post, I was still shaky about my decision, still half convinced that I'd overreacted. Now, after everything that's unfolded since, I don't question it anymore. If anything, I wish I'd walked away sooner. After the whole incident where his mom showed up at my job, I completely blocked both of them. I changed my number a few weeks later just for peace of mind. I thought that was the end of it. I went back to therapy, started journaling, and focused on myself for once. I even went on that solo trip I mentioned. 10 days in Colorado hiking, reading, and drinking coffee without checking my phone every 5 minutes. It was the calmest I've felt in years. When I got back home though, I had a few missed calls from an unfamiliar local number. I ignored them, assuming they were spam. Then I got an email, not from him, but from his sister. She said she wanted to warn me that things had gotten bad at home. Apparently, their mom's behavior had gone completely off the rails since I left. She was calling his workplace several times a day, showing up there unannounced, and even calling his coworkers to ask if he was okay or seeing anyone. His boss eventually had to speak with him about it because it was disrupting the office. According to the sister, that conversation embarrassed him so much that he packed up and moved out again. Where did he move? Back in with one of his mom's friends, the same friend who helped her call and harass him about visiting after our engagement. The sister said their mom was telling everyone I brainwashed him, and that's why he was so cold to her now. I almost laughed when I read that. It's like she genuinely can't comprehend that her son is an adult. A couple weeks after that email, one of our mutual friends sent me a screenshot from Facebook. It was a long, dramatic post his mom made about losing people to selfish women and how a mother's love is never appreciated until she's gone. It had a dozen comments from family members agreeing with her and saying things like, "Men always forget who raised them." My ex had commented too, "Love you, Mom, always." But here's the twist. Right after that, he apparently deactivated his account. A day later, his sister told me he'd blocked his mom's number and hadn't spoken to her since that argument at work. I'm not going to lie, when I heard that, my first feeling wasn't satisfaction. It was sadness. Because as toxic as that relationship was, it's still painful to watch someone self-destruct like that. He spent his whole life enabling her, protecting her feelings, defending her, but it sounds like she finally pushed him too far. The weird part is, a few weeks later, I got an apology. Not from her, obviously, but from him. He sent it through email since I'd blocked him everywhere else. It was a long message, about 3 paragraphs. He said therapy had made him realize how much control his mom had over his life and how unfair that was to me. He said he didn't expect me to forgive him, but he wanted me to know I wasn't the crazy one. He even admitted that when we were together, he used to text his mom every time we argued because she needed to know everything, and that now, looking back, he could see how inappropriate that was. I didn't respond, not because I was angry, but because I didn't have anything left to say. I'd already spent so much time trying to explain those same things when we were together, and he didn't listen then. I'm glad he's getting help now, but I'm not signing up for a sequel to that relationship. I've learned that closure doesn't always come from a conversation. Sometimes it comes from realizing you don't need one. For anyone wondering if I was tempted to take him back, no. That part of my life is over. Even if he's finally recognizing what happened, the damage is too deep. I don't hate him, but I don't trust him either. It's like looking at someone you used to love and realizing you were both speaking different languages the whole time. As for his mom, apparently things have spiraled even more. His sister told me she was reported to her employer. Remember, she's a therapist, because she was using her client's emergency contact information to call her son when he blocked her. That's a serious breach of ethics. I don't know all the details, but the sister said her mom is under review at her job now. It's sad, but also not shocking. Boundaries were never a concept she respected. Not with her son, not with me, not even professionally, apparently. Since then, I've had no contact with anyone from that family. I've kept my life small and peaceful. I moved apartments, started volunteering on weekends, and reconnected with a few old friends I distanced myself from during the relationship. It's funny how isolation creeps up on you when you're dealing with someone controlling. It's like you don't even realize how many parts of yourself you've silenced until you're finally free. The biggest change, though, is how I view relationships now. Before all this, I thought love meant being patient and understanding no matter what. Now, I know love also means protecting your peace and knowing when to walk away. I used to think setting boundaries made me cold or difficult. Now I know it makes me sane. Every once in a while, I'll think about how different things could have been if he'd handled it earlier, if he'd stood up to her, if he'd listened in therapy. But then, I remember the woman who showed up to my job with muffins to lecture me about forgiveness. and I realized nothing would have changed. That's who she is, and that's who he was when he chose her over me. A couple weeks ago, I finally took off my engagement ring. I'd kept it in a drawer this whole time, not out of sentimentality, but because I wasn't sure what to do with it. I ended up donating it to a local domestic violence organization that repurposes jewelry to raise funds for survivors. It felt symbolic, turning something painful into something that might help someone else. I don't have much more to say except this. If anyone reading this is stuck in a relationship where you're constantly competing with a parent, please take it seriously. It doesn't get better unless that person chooses to change, and most of them don't. You can't outlove or outpatient a lifelong enmeshment. I learned that the hard way, but I'm grateful I learned it before I got legally tied to it.